Hi everybody and welcome to Heel Heat. My name is George Coles, and on this episode we're walking in Memphis. Topic for this walking in Memphis, a little bit different than normal. This one we're just going to talk about exotic Adrian Street. Now the reason for this, at the time of this recording, just yesterday we found out that he had passed. He actually passed back on July 24th, and I kind of wanted to highlight him, and he's someone that is a legend in the Memphis area, someone who's well known in both the CWA and also Continental Wrestling, which wasn't necessarily Memphis, but in Tennessee as well. I'm not going to make this a very long video, and there's only realistically one thing I reviewed for this, so there is a review aspect to it. I'm not going to give it a score like I normally do. Normally I rate everything on a 1 to 5 scale. I'm not going to rate it just because this is more of a celebration and me paying my tribute to the man. There is a far better tribute than what I'm going to do here by a gentleman named James Romero, which I hope I'm pronouncing his name right because I've only ever heard him say his first name, or I'm just haven't picked up on him saying his last name. He runs a YouTube channel called Wrestling Shoot Interviews, and most of you will know him as the co-host of the Dutch Mantel podcast, which is a podcast that I like, that I don't watch every single one of, but I do enjoy James's style. He used to have a podcast with Don Morocco that I really like because I'm a big Don Morocco fan. I'm a big Dutch Mantel fan too, so that's awesome that he does that. He's also got some other interviews with other wrestlers. He's a very good interviewer and a very good podcast host. He knows what he's talking about. He's very engaging. And he put out a fantastic video talking about the life and career of Adrian Street. And I'm not going to be able to do it justice, so I recommend you checking that out, which there is going to be a link in my description here. Just do me a favor, if you haven't seen it before here, tell him that my channel sent you. Maybe he'll take a look at my channel. I know I watch his. The few things I do want to talk about with Adrian Street are just how innovative he was. And a lot of it, I also watched the WWE produced Imagine What I Could Do to You, which was a song that Adrian Street actually put out, which is about a 20-minute mini documentary, I guess you could say, about the man and his influence. And Adrian was a guy that I had seen growing up and was always intrigued by. He was very different than anybody else, kind of androgynous, like a glam rock singer, like almost like a David Bowie or a New York Dolls style to him, ramped up to 11. The interesting thing from the WWE produced video is how they talked about everybody was going one way, big, giant, muscular men. And here's this 5'9" guy that does the exact opposite. Goes as flamboyant as he can, leans into, and yes, unfortunately it was a product of the time, leans into the homophobia aspect and really uses that to his advantage. Plays with the tropes of what people expected from that, especially when he brought in Miss Linda to be his valet, which by all intents and purposes, she's just as tough as he was, and she ended up marrying him several years later, and from everything I hear, I've never met either one of them. They're both fantastic people, and two of the nicest people in pro wrestling. Adrian was the guy that pretty much set the template for your Adrian Adonis gimmick, your Gold Dust gimmick. You could even say now, as the time has progressed, people like Effie or even a Dalton Castle, you could take the influence of Adrian Street and trace it directly to those guys. And the thing of it was, Adrian was such a dynamic wrestler that there was all the pomp and circumstance, all the flamboyance, all of the prancing around, and then he would turn it on in the ring and do joint manipulation. The one really great thing from the WWE produced video, it was when the UK Performance Center was still around, and it showed some of the UK wrestlers talking about his influence and then juxtaposed them doing moves that Adrian Street did in his career, so you could see his impact on European wrestling, on wrestling in the United Kingdom. Just a legendary talent, one of the absolute pioneers, a great wrestler. He lived a long life. He lived to be almost 83 years old, just past 82. He left his mark. He's not someone that if you ever seen him wrestle, you'll ever forget. And that's probably the biggest compliment I could pay to. Now, the video I did review for here was actually from IWA, which, if you know, that's the Paffo's organization, Randy Savage, Angelo Paffo, Lanny Paffo, and it ran opposition in Memphis to what we normally carry. Now, I want to say at this time, because the video I watched was from 1985, early in 1985, and I think at that time they were already in a working agreement, if not totally absolved into the CWA, because we already had Randy Savage coming over and having feuds with Jerry Lawler. And yes, this is what I'm going to talk about here. The match that I found was Adrian Street versus Randy Savage. And this wasn't the only match I found of Adrian Street's. This was one that I thought most tied to the Memphis area, so I could tie it in with this video. And this altogether is a masterpiece. It's so great that this has survived the 40 years since it's been on the air. We start the video with Elizabeth Hallett, which, if you don't know, that's Miss Elizabeth, basically throws us to the match, and we see two masters of psychology, so much so that, and I hope you watch the video. There is a link in the description here. I'm not going to give away the finish. I'm not going to give a rating. I'm just going to give it as a recommendation, but I'm going to talk about the match a bit. These guys were so masterful that it's 7 minutes before they even really touch each other. And the video is 14 minutes long, so half of the time, they aren't even engaging with each other. Yet they have the crowd in the palm of their hands. I mean, we talk about Randy Savage, one of the all-time greats, and I would have to say he probably even took a little bit of influence from Adrian Street himself. This is a phenomenal example of what Adrian Street was, what he meant to the pro wrestling world. Like I said, I'm not going to rate the match. I do recommend you watching it. Please go to the link right here. And basically, that's all I wanted to say about this. I wanted to make a short video, basically, again, as a tribute to Adrian Street. With all that being said, rest in peace, Adrian Street. You made an impact on pro wrestling. You made an impact on myself. You're someone I'm never ever going to forget, and I'm probably going to tell generations of the Coles family stories about you. Godspeed, Adrian. My prayers and thoughts out to you, Miss Linda. I know this is a terrible time for you and the rest of his family, so my thoughts and prayers are going out to the family. With all that being said, my name is George Coles, and we've been walking in Memphis.